Good afternoon. Pleasure seeing you. So we have such a wonderful crowd to attend our session, learn, grow, and succeed in Kubernetes contributions. I'll start with a round of introduction. I feel that KubeCon is like a big gathering event of netizens, you know. We sit in front of the computer all day, and after meeting up, we don't know who is who. So I'll start with myself. My name is Zhang Wenjia. I work in Google as a software engineer. I contribute to Kubernetes SDE and GKE. Sorry for the, slip of tongue. My name is Xiang. I contributed to several projects. SCD is the first one, and later on I participated in final permissions, Kubernetes, and Rocket, and some others. I participated and involved in some of them. Let me add, Xiang is a modest guy. He's the founder of SCD, so a lot of contributions indeed. My name is Chao. My GitHub ID is called Chao. I only involved in Kubernetes. Most of them APN involved related projects. My name is Chen. I only contribute to the open source Kubernetes project for storage related programs. So every time to attend KubeCon, I'm exhilarated. I used to stay in an enclosed space to do the things, to do the daily mundane concerns. But in KubeCon, we saw so many people gather from different corners of the world and offer your insight to discuss the same product, the development and the application. I think for Kubernetes as an open source product, it is because of its unique glamour that have attracted so much a wonderful crowd. So every time I learn a lot from KubeCon, and this time it's actually the third time. And the first time was also in Shanghai last year. It was the first KubeCon in China, and then the second time was held in North America, and the third time is in Shanghai again. I'm very happy. How many of you attended Shanghai's KubeCon the year before the last year? So I don't know if you noticed that the organizing committee has selected the timing quite well. So last year, the KubeCon was when the crab was popularizing themselves. So a lot of crabs. But this is not the most exciting thing for me. So every half a year or every several months, I attend the KubeCon, and I'll find that for the Kubernetes growth, you can see it for yourself. The growth of the community, the growth of each community members. So for some of them, they just barely knew the concept of Kubernetes, and like my boss told me to attend the KubeCon because my company is about to use it, and indeed we find that it's very good, and we grow from a participant to a contributor to a member. So this growth are amazing. So today I feel very excited to have invited so many renowned players in this field to share in Kubernetes their story. Just now mentioned the Kubernetes as open source product, some of its uniqueness. I'd like to throw a question to you, to our audience. For you, in your software career, besides the Kubernetes, can you talk about some of the products you developed, or compared with these products, what is the unique features of Kubernetes? Who's about to make the start? I'll make the start. Initially, I do ABCD project, and our QS, we are from the same startup team, so we did some open system. It's also open source project. So Kubernetes, compared with this open source products, it's a platform product. It's a platform project. So it integrates, synchronizes many cloud resources. This is very interesting because it's a platform. There will be many participants involved and contributing to the project, making it a community-driven project. Initially, people look at Kubernetes as a QS and Google involved, and because of so many cloud providers and Microsoft engaged in it, and other big players. So this is a very interesting project. It's growing bigger and bigger. It's also a platform-based, so it offers a lot of upstream capabilities. It's a platform for platform builders. It's also incubating some other platforms like the service mesh. It's a platform, and we can see in building kinetic project. This is also very interesting. In Kubernetes ecosystem is further expanding more derivative platforms. So this is one of the Kubernetes' biggest glamour. It attracted so many researchers to further the platform. Thank you. I have little experience in other open source projects. I can only compare some of Google's in-house products. For me, Kubernetes open source, and it involves many different participants and contributors, so it attracts wider attention, and it requires very good communication skills to talk to different developers, and at the end of the day, the end product is good. Compared with the Google's in-house products, using Kubernetes, for one, there will be more languages and communication processes, and it's easier for development. The environment people are discussing online, while in Google, you must find the right experts to obtain good comments. That's it. Thank you. I used to do a few database-related projects, like some Redis. I read some Redis. I think Kubernetes, compared with other projects, primarily the architecture is flexible, is agile. So in terms of scalability, it's easier. So it's a platform-based project. It's easier to build anything you want on the platform. So as an open source project, compared with what you develop in-house, the requirement, the user expectations are different. And your teammates, you have different teammates jointly developing the platform. So there are pros and cons, of course, and I mentioned that the Kubernetes itself has some uniqueness, unique features, and Chao mentioned some. For you, as developers, in developing the software, what is the easiest and most challenging thing when developing Kubernetes? We will start from the other way around. So I think for Kubernetes ecosystem is relatively mature, just like Xiao has mentioned. There are a lot of contributors, lots of documentation, so it's easier to search materials, literature, and people. And the most challenging thing is because it's scalability, it's good scalability. So some of the way are egos, so you have to address these issues. For me, it's a big challenge. In developing the project, we met many issues related to performances. I think the most challenging thing, some has mentioned that Kubernetes has a good scalability. I was in charge of API. So it provides scalability. So speaking of scalability, we must consider how to maintain its future upgradable. So design-wise, it's difficult for people to reach consensus. Where the simplest component I cannot think of now. I think the easiest thing for Kubernetes project, like you don't need to write PPT, you don't need to report. The requirements, the specs are there. You only need to take references and find out how many are needed. So it's a simple procedure. And the most challenging thing is that the project itself use many aspects. You don't know that how the users are using the system. Maybe you want to improve on some aspects that you deem as worthy, as useful, but you must do from a user perspective. And another point, just like Zhang mentioned, the Kubernetes is based on the APS server. So if you want to change, modify this bit, it will be very challenging. If we make the already very highly scalable platform more scalable, it will be a challenge. Indeed. Before the talk has started, I asked several questions to understand whether people have started, some thinking. I find that most of them are beginners. Most of them have never written code in Kubernetes. So for beginners, in fact, easy spots they are much more than challenging spots. If they can all learn how to write open source code, there's no reason that you cannot excel. They encounter issues that you will also encounter, and you can search these problems online and find your answer, like a code convention. You only need to check the open source language. And another good point, don't panic if you make mistakes, because no one knows what the user cases of others look like. Even if you make mistakes, no one is concerned, will be mad at you that why have you not considered it in the design phase. So for learners, for fresh beginners, it's a good way to contribute to a product like this, and will grow. And your growth pathway, you will learn much quickly how to use Kubernetes compared with other products. And also, there's a lot of if there's a lot of testing involved and many people reporting bugs to you.
Next, we're going to get into details. When you come to Kubernetes, what kind of contribution you can make, and what kind of roles you can play in Kubernetes. I found most of you have used the Kubernetes since you have paid for the tickets. At least you've used it. If you are a user of Kubernetes, you're already a contributor to it. If you have any questions about it when you're using it, for example, what kind of things it failed to satisfy your need, then maybe you need to figure out it yourself, and you can promote an issue. You can set up an issue and ask questions there. In this way, you are helping Kubernetes to become better. Next, we can have a look at the community page here. Apart from being a user to set up any issues, what else you can do in this community? On the first level is the members of Kubernetes. Before being the members, you've already a contributor before you becoming a member. However, it has some requirement to be a member of Kubernetes. It's not a big requirement. It's not that difficult. There were two reviewers of the sponsors. Their roles in the Kubernetes are reviewers, and you have made some contribution to the project, has submitted some of the PR. Of course, there are some people who review the PR for you, and the reviewer during this process will have their own opinions on you, that whether you have achieved the membership requirements and whether you have achieved the membership level. Next band is the reviewer, approver, sub-project owner, and In the document link, they also have some detailed introduction, very detailed description about each of the roles, and also the steps to become different roles. I also want to ask you, as our guest, which role did you start? And during your journey, what kind of change you have experienced? I think when I contribute to Kubernetes, it seems you haven't set up those roles bands starting from 2014 because the project of Kubernetes and just announced, and I'm interested in it, and also I'm also one of the people interested in it because I'm writing another thing called etcd, and I'm looking at it just to find some useful tools and also make some contribution. And our company work on another project called Fleet, maybe similar to utilizing the systemd and sysbone to start a container, but do not have a good orchestration capability like Kubernetes. And it's like Kubernetes has a better abstraction on some concepts and services. So not just myself to clarify this, to devote it to the Kubernetes and start to give up the original flicks. And eventually Kubernetes has become a Kubernetes focused company. So we started to contribute more project to it, like overall network, and also have designed another project that is originally port for the Kubernetes. Originally, when we built the Kubernetes team, we have done a lot of work, mainly focusing on security, because a lot of enterprise user and has authorization model is just on the early stage. So we have promoted a lot of progress on security. And as for the extension, we also done a lot of work. At that time, it's called the support resource. It was still called this name, and we also have been so that we can make this ecosystem more thriving and prosperous, because we're always thinking how can we make more contribution to this community so that the community will be more active and more projects are able to run on Kubernetes, and the barrier will be lower for many people so that it can satisfy more needs of the user scenarios. And we started to use Kubernetes in 2015. It's Kubernetes 1.0. And my first job was in Google at that time. In the first few months, we are modifying different documents, but did not do a lot of contribution. But gradually, the first contribution is to write some codes on it to recover some bugs. After recovering some bugs, then I work on some small projects, and then on APM to work on some more difficult things. And now we feel that when people making contributions would be different from a few years ago, like the Kubernetes 6 organization also have a lot of projects. And we are also working on the storage migration. And the contribution is not on Kubernetes. And we also welcome all of you to work on this project. I think I'm a little bit later than them. At the time, because our company want to migrate our own application to Kubernetes. Kubernetes started from modifying some incidences and debugging, and then I started to be familiar with the coding, and also I'm interested in storage. So under some of the guidance, for example, some of the key contributor there, I started to design some features and contribute my own code. Thank you very much. We can see no matter, and all of them started from a small point. For example, the testing, documents, or anywhere you're interested in, or you have seen the PR and review it, and then you found that maybe you can improve it and specify some of those lines that you are not satisfied with and why you write it in a different way, etc. To start is not that difficult. Everybody can start easily, and you can make your own contribution with your own capability since then. We can talk about something more specific. How can we learn, grow, and succeed with the Kubernetes code? And what kind of information that could be useful to us? And what kind of things can help us? Many people may not know that. And also, it's very touching that a lot of people, apart from writing code or making contribution to Kubernetes, they also have done a lot of work to the community. For example, there are some in some of the events that can help everyone, like in different kinds of documents that can help us. They're trying all methods to help each other. And this is not loaded. I want to show you. The information of the community. You can zoom in a bit. And on the repository of the Kubernetes communities, there are different kinds of useful informations, and all of them started from that. Of course, when they started their contribution, you haven't found this. Even 2 years ago, we did not see that much in the reservoir. For example, communication. It can tell you what different fields that you can contribute in. For example, YouTube video, and also the 6 special interest group. When KBS become bigger, there will be different aspects. So now it has developed into different 6. If you are interested in it, you can join the special interest group, and each of the 6 group will have the community meetup, meeting, and different kind of conferences. You can join them, and some social media as well, like Twitter and Stack Overflow. And also in China, maybe you will find some local events here as well, or local website. And Slack channel, you can communicate with the members of the communities on Slack. And there are different type of issues, all the questions, and all of the issues that you set up will be managed. For example, when we launch an issue, there is a bug scrap meeting. Every week, there were 2 meetings that is focusing on special interest groups for all the new added issues and PRs. So all of these issues setup will be managed and reviewed. And now it has been public and everyone can join it. If you're interested in any of these PRs or issues, you can join it and review it. Next is how you review these documents in office hours and meetings as well every month. There are a lot of meetings. If you do not know where to get this information, you will only find those schedules that are too tight for you to follow. Just like I mentioned, there are different kinds of special interest groups. You can follow or join anything you're interested in. Because now we are in China, I also want to ask another question, that in China or Asia communities, what's the characteristics and challenges here? I know Xiang and Yuquan, you are now spend a lot of time in China. And compare with the Northern America, China will have its own features. First, it's the time difference, different time zones. So the meetings of this C group would be mixed by them. Maybe they need to add some extra time for it. If you have any opinions, maybe you can communicate with us. I think the challenge is a lot. First is the time zone difference. Next is the language difference. When you're writing, because we have quite high requirements when you describe it, and people want it to be concrete and specific, clear, so it will have some requirements on that. And thirdly, the domestic colleagues in these communities would be a little bit shy. So, and for the foreign colleagues, they would like to propose some of the simple or very easy bugs or issues, but for the domestic colleagues, they haven't show this situation. And also in the foreign community, they will have more frequent communication and even the daily meetup. But in China, I think the frequency is lower and the sharing channels are limited. Some of the, like the Huawei, Alibaba, may be able to host some of the monthly meetup. Maybe you can join it and tell them your opinions and also allocate some of the things you want to do in Kubernetes. Because we hope it to be a community-driven project. If we are not able to reflect these voices in the community, then it's very difficult for us to promote development of the community.
So we should have more meetups in China. I think for me, there are two challenges. Just like Wenjia has mentioned, the first challenge is about the meetups. They are following the US time zone. So for their morning, we are, 1 or even 12 a.m. So it's difficult for us to attend the meetups. Second, actually, maybe due to some reasons, some of the overseas stuff, because of the internet or maybe some other reasons, we cannot get our hands on them. So for some KPI related materials, we must acquire through some special means. So for me, maybe US or maybe there's some other ways to address it, so we can get our hands on these materials more easy. An advertisement that Alibaba is trying to transfer these materials to China, some of the Docker image. And we are also doing localization for the Home Hub, because within the Hub, there are many images and tasks. In Google Story, we are trying to do the localization. So if you have any other special needs, feel free to talk to our team. We are more than willing to help the domestic community. How about Chao? we are based in the States. So what's your take on this? By attending KubeCon or in your daily lives, in your communication with domestic developers, what's your take on this situation? I think in China, as a contributor, it's a very practical thing. Actually, I collaborated with a lot of domestic contributors, so it's a step by step. You join the community first, you should win the trust, and that is by doing more stuff, starting from simple bugs fixing, and gradually, step by step, people will trust you. So I didn't see any biases against Chinese contributors, and I don't think language is a problem. Personally, I think for US people, although they perceive your English pronunciation as somewhat problematic, but they still get you. I think last year is the first Chinese KubeCon, and this year is the second CUBE. So during the 1 year's time, you can see, and also on the Kubernetes report, that the contributors' PR from coming from China is getting greater and rapidly. So how many companies in China and how many developers in China there are? This trend is there. One thing I have realized when preparing the slides, Kubernetes community on their web page, there are many language options: Germany, French, English, but there's no Chinese. So from this simple thing, we can start with providing simple translation. So there's a lot of things to contribute. So this topic, for one, it's about experienced audiences will tell us that as beginners, some of the things to be mindful about. And second, as Chinese developers and users, if you have any thoughts, don't take. Please don't refrain from mentioning it because it's a trifle for you. But whatever the subject matter, feel free to shoot so that it can attract attention and be addressed. Actually, we have a special interest group called Contributor Experience with the hope to enhance people's experience. We have 1 minute left, so I'd like to ask if you have any questions. Thank you for sharing with us. I'm interested in, for you in open source, how many time will you invest weekly? For developers, they have, their work, and open source project. This project is only their part-time occupation. So actually, this is a question, for many of the audiences. They share this question. The previous company, I work as a full-time open source developer, engaged in a lot of projects. Now I switched to another company. Most of my time was spent on internal platform development, and of course, I will spend some time on open source. So now I don't have that much spare time, but still there are some spare time. Each day it's not saturated. As long as you're interested, you always find some time to do it. I think I'm a lucky guy. My company paid me to do open source, so I don't need additional investment. But for some period of time, there were some. I was working on some in-house open source projects, so I will not be, investing too much time on other open source project. So there are some time limit indeed. Previously, I was a full-time open source developer, and in Alibaba, I have a lot of time to do open source related stuff. Not necessarily writing code, but some other generic stuff. So I have some time for that stuff. So my feeling is that people can't find some time to do open source. And there will be a significant self-improvement by participating in open source project than engaging in corporate affairs, because it's joint efforts made by many. I don't think we have time for another question. So how about this? After that, offline, feel free to approach us and ask questions. I should have prepared contact information for us. Now, I'll write it down. Thank you.